Buckeye Lounge, we run this game. Shrockstar Shaun, remember the name. TG's lurking, Wolverine's fear. Scarlet and gray, make it loud and clear. TG and Shaun, bringing that smoke. They stand in the paint, that ain't no joke. Tune in, turn up, let the show begin. The Buckeye Lounge, straight fire within. Buckeye Lounge, we run this game. Shrockstar Shaun, remember the name. TG's lurking, Wolverine's fear. Scarlet and gray, make it loud and clear.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Buckeye fans of all ages, the Ohio podcast proudly brings to you the Buckeye Lounge. I'm your host, the Shrockstar, Shaun Shrock. Along with me, as usual, my co-host, my partner in crime, the Wolverine Slayer herself, TG. And tonight, we have two special guests with us. We got two former great Buckeyes tonight. We got Mr. Tim Anderson, friend of the show, who's been on here, practically our honorary third co-host. And
hey guys, what's going on?
For the first time, we got our quarterback, 3-year starter, Mr. Greg Fry. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great. Glad to be on, guys.
Pleasure to have you guys on. Some of you guys, I know we advertised earlier that Matt Finkes was supposed to be our guest tonight, but some stuff came up, so we had to reschedule. So these two guys were happy to jump in on short notice, and I thank both of you for jumping in and helping us out. It's a pleasure to have you guys on. Guys, we had a very big game Saturday. Julian saying first time starting, didn't have a warm-up game against, Akron or a school like that. They shoved them against the first, number one team ranked in the nation. Greg, you know a little bit about going out as a young quarterback and starting as you were a sophomore, I believe, when you started your first game, weren't you?
That's true, yes.
So you kind of know where Julian's coming from. Kind of give us what's it like? Kind of mentally, how'd you mentally prepare? What was going through his mind? What went through your mind when you played?
Yeah, the irony is our first game was against Syracuse, and they had won 14 games in a row, and they were highly ranked. And I got to tell you, that it was probably 3 weeks leading up to that. I didn't sleep well. That day couldn't get there fast enough. It was a dream that to be the starting quarterback, and I knew that day was coming. But that summer was a long summer, and I think it helped getting in camp and really getting focused on just on prepping and doing everything you got to do. But I can tell you that as we got closer to the game, my sleep was less and less and less, and I think we had a 1 o'clock kickoff that day. I'm pretty sure I was probably up at 5 a.m. staring at the ceiling. It just couldn't get here fast enough. And I think fortunately we played a great game that day. If I recall correctly, no penalties, no turnovers, which is unreal for a game one. And that we won that game very soundly against a very good Syracuse team. So that was it was a great experience. And you just don't know how it's going to turn out. Obviously, you want to play well, but as it relates to what you talk about with Julian, I think he had a very good day, and I think I give a lot of credit to the coaches for putting him in positions to have success, but not asking him to do too much. And when you can combine that with a great defensive effort, you can do that. And you see on the flip side what happened with Texas, because they didn't have much of a running game going on. And a lot of pressure is on their quarterback, and you take the name away, he struggled. And I think he's going to be a very, very good quarterback. But I give the credit to the Ohio State coaches offensively for really doing a good job with Julian and just not putting too much on his plate, because that can be really heavy in a week one.
Now, Tim, you were at the game. Tell us your thoughts on how you felt he performed.
I thought he did a great job. I completely agree with Greg. I think Hartline and the rest of the offensive staff did a great job of the short intermediate throws. They didn't ask him to try to throw the ball downfield. I think the players around him really stepped up and played really well. And I don't know, I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what his final numbers ended up being, but I mean, don't forget he had like 3 or 4 drops in that game that were right on a receiver's hands that like probably would have made his number. I mean, added, I don't know, 40, 50 maybe yards to his total. Obviously would have upped his completion percentage and stuff like that. But I thought he did a great job. He was hitting guys where they needed to be. He didn't seem panicked. He didn't seem like the moment was too big. I mean, he kind of looked like a veteran starter. And I was really impressed with the coaching staff that they didn't, with the way he kind of started out, that they didn't try to push the gas pedal too hard and try to do more than they needed to. So I think it was huge for his confidence. His numbers were pretty good for a first start in a game situation like that. Going out in front of 100,000+ fans. The environment that day was crazy. I mean, we didn't sit the entire game. We sat at halftime and we sat during the commercial breaks, and that was it. That's the first game I've ever, and I go to several games a year, a handful of games a year. And I've never stood for the entire game like that.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Hey, Aaron had a quick question for you guys, and I'm just gonna ask you now. What was it like coming out of the tunnel? Do y'all still get juiced up?
I'll jump on that one first. My actually first game as a Buckeye was in the Meadowlands in the kickoff classic. We played Alabama in 1986, and I'll never forget running out the first time. And this was for warm-ups. And I came trucking out in warm-ups, a lot of fans in the stadium, and I'm looking around like, this is really cool. And the turf monster got me, and I went, bam, face first.
Oh, dang.
And I'm sure Tim can relate. I took a lot of abuse from the other quarterbacks on that one because I got up like nothing happened. They would never let me live that one down. So that was my first experience.
You say that. I mean, and I'm sure it was the same way when you were there, Greg. Like, it's kind of a running joke for the freshmen. Like, all right, like, watch your step. Like, don't be that guy that bites it on the way out because you don't. So, luckily, I did not. I kept my head down. I focused on my feet, like one foot in front of another, so I did not trip running out, thankfully, because I probably would have taken 1 or 2 guys down with me.
And I'll just say that my first time in Ohio Stadium, and Tim, I bet you can relate. I almost hyperventilated running all the way to the other end zone. Like, you're so juiced, it is the coolest feeling, and it's such a rush. And I learned after doing that a couple times, like, okay, I got to gear this down a little bit. I got to save some energy because I don't want to expend it running all the way down. But the first time, I gassed it all the way, and I was having a hard time breathing.
It's an unreal feeling.
We had a former teammate of yours on here, Robert Smith, was talking about after he scored his first touchdown, you pitched him the ball, and he came to the sidelines and he threw up.
He
goes, he didn't live that down either. Everybody was making fun, but he said he threw up on his shoes. That he was that pumped up and excited.
Oh yeah, he had a great game that day. I remember it well.
What was it? What would you guys' opinion be on the play calling of Brian Hartline? How well do you guys think he did?
I think Brian did a fabulous job, and I was like everybody else, probably thinking, okay, this is going to be a lot different. How is he going to do? And certainly some big shoes to fill. Coming off of last year, but I think I give him credit. I give Ryan Day a lot of credit for really grooming Hartline. Over the last couple of years, and maybe he wasn't that patient about it, but it seems like he was. But I think I think they did a nice job of running pass. I mean, again, to me, first game against a great opponent like that, you got to take care of the football. It doesn't need to be flashy. I think we've got some flash that we'll see eventually, but it's just get the W. Do what you got to do to get the W. And they didn't get too fancy. Excuse me. Didn't need to, really, with the defensive effort. So I give him a great thumbs up because the running game was starting to show. You know, you got a lot of new bodies out there, new running backs. So I say full thumbs up on the coaching effort, and I would say for both coordinators. I know you're just asking about offense, but both of them did a great job.
What did you guys think of the defense?
I thought it was phenomenal. And I think both sides of the ball, Greg kind of touched on it with the offense, and same thing on the defense. You were replacing a lot of guys from last year. I think there were a lot of question marks on how those guys were gonna step in, both offensive line. I mean, I think we have like 3 or 4 new starters there. Defense, the whole defensive line was brand new as far as starting goes. So you had a lot of new pieces, guys that weren't normally starters. And I think both sides, I mean, they looked, for being the first game of the year under 2 new coordinators, I mean, they look like veterans out there. Like, these guys have been starting for the last couple of years. The way they were moving, the way they were communicating, it didn't seem, now I haven't gone back and watched it on tape or anything, but live, it didn't seem like there were a whole lot of mental errors, guys missing blocks, guys were playing hard. And I think that's a huge credit to both coordinators for putting the guys in the positions, keeping things basic. Because there is something to, you can try and do too much. You can try and be too fancy instead of just saying, you know what, let's keep it basic. Let's keep it simple. We got some of the best athletes in the country. Just let them go play. Go let them have fun. Let them do their thing.
Now, I got a
I would just
question.
add to that. I think Matt Patricia, to me, he did a fabulous job. To me, the defense won the game. I mean, they set the tone early on. They put a lot of pressure on Manning. He was never comfortable all day long. He had some what I would call exotic blitzes that he mixed in that, the offensive line for Texas really struggled with picking that up. And Manning never got in a rhythm. Just even on the drive they scored, he made a good throw, but it could have been a lot better. But he had somebody in his face. And I think, again, I really like the attitude that he brings. And I think we got a good one. I think we've upgraded at the defensive coordinator position.
Now, I got a question for you, both of you guys. Now, coming in next week, it's Grambling. And I know, everybody expects us to blow them out. But how long would you guys keep the starters in, since, Julian needs some extra reps? So does maybe our offensive line, because those guys haven't played together that much. And, them guys need to get chemistry built. Would you keep them in there an extra quarter long, till the end of the third quarter? Or does it just depend on, how the game goes?
Well, I'll go, Tim. I think it depends on the coaching philosophy, really. I mean, I think part of it's let's assume they're gonna win big, right? You would think that,
Yeah.
but you got to get enough reps for your position players, obviously, from a conditioning standpoint too, because it's only week 2, so there's that. Maybe. And again, depends on it's going to be sport dependent too. If it's 50-0 at halftime, well, then you kind of got to switch gears. But the other side of that too is, playing guys that are 2s and 3s and 4s that, hey, they want to play too. They practice too. And that really is a great thing for camaraderie. So that's it's not an easy decision, because I think you can get criticized no matter what you do. If you wait too long or go too early, but it's as a head coach, it's you being decisive about, here's how we're going to handle this. I don't think you go into the game with a specific plan right away. You got to kind of play it by ear. But I'm sure Tim can relate. I mean, there's a lot of younger guys. I remember when I was a backup, I wanted my reps too. And you practice hard, and you want to play at Ohio Stadium as well. So, there's 2 sides of that equation.
Yeah, I agree with the 2 sides. I think it's almost more player based, the way I view it. I think that there are certain guys that, Jeremiah Smith, he's not going to have to play 3 quarters. He's a guy that you could probably sit in the first half, midway through that second quarter, at halftime. Obviously, some of those guys on defense downs and stuff like that have experience that you don't have to worry about as much. But some of those other positions, like Sane, you might want to leave him in the game. He needs live game reps. He's got to work. And I think he did phenomenal against Texas. Don't get me wrong. But, Greg can comment on this more so than a nose tackle, but there's a lot of timing involved with the passing game. Getting guys in the right positions. I think there's an opportunity with Grambling because it should be a big win. Maybe you can open up that playbook a little bit and give him some more reps and experience at, getting that ball downfield, things of that nature. That offensive line, same thing. With those guys being all relatively new starters, same thing up front defensively. So I think it's more player based on where those guys are at experience level wise. And I think you can pull certain ones sooner than later. But I guess, just sitting here off the hip, I probably wouldn't play really any of the starters into the fourth quarter, to give those other guys reps. Because that's another big thing too. Those guys want those reps, those backups and stuff. But you also got to prepare those guys too, because, you're one play from being a starter. I mean, if you're a backup, I mean, you are that close. So you want to make sure that you're getting those guys reps and experience as well, so that if something were to happen to somebody else, like you could plug a guy in and keep rolling.
Yeah, our friend no, it wasn't Andre. Where is Tyler's question? Here, does he? He wants to ask what you guys want to see out of Ohio State within the next 3 weeks on their preparing for their road trip to Washington. Like, what specifically would you guys want to see out of this team?
I think that's a great question. And I got to give a little shout. I'm reading some of the comments here about the Darth Vader. I appreciate those. Thanks for remembering, guys. That's I should have thought to bring my helmet tonight because I still have it with the mask. I think if you're Ryan Day and the staff, it's you got to see improvement from the first 3-4 weeks of the season, and any coach would tell you that, especially week 1 to week 2 is really, really important. So sometimes, and I've been a high school coach. I'm not saying I've coached at the college level, but I know as a high school coach, it's when you didn't get an opponent like you do have this week. No disrespect to Grambling, but this week is about the Buckeyes getting better and really focusing on, hey, we have to get better. And I'm sure if you watch the film, there's probably a whole bunch of areas where they got to improve on both sides of the ball and on special teams. So, those are the things over the course of the next 3-4 weeks they've got to figure out, as well as probably personnel, because as Tim mentioned, there's a lot of new guys out there. And just watching the game, I watched it on TV. I saw a lot of good things, but I'm sure when you watch the film, there's probably some areas for improvement. But there's also heavy competition in all those positions, which is part of what the program really develops. Is those practices are highly competitive. So you got guys that want to play that maybe didn't get as many reps as they think. So in those first 3 weeks, let's see as coaches, who's going to really step up. And I think that's where. And you're right. By the time you go on the road, to a place like Washington, you better be ready to go.
Now, next week, with Grambling being Grambling, what do you look for Julian to take that next step? Do you want to see him throw the ball downfield more, Greg? What's the next step kind of in this process that you want to see from him taking another step forward? What would you like to see?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that's where as a coach you got to be patient and meet him where he's at. And I come from the approach of it. Again, I've coached quarterbacks. I've been an offensive coordinator. If you're not there at practice, or you're not in the quarterback room, you really don't know kind of what his mindset is. But I will say this: Ryan Day is arguably one of the best that there is at bringing along quarterbacks. And you got a guy, and I'm the type, throw out the 4-star, 5-star BS and get it out of here, because it didn't matter on game day. It's gone, okay? Now it's about what you can do and what you can really do in this offense. And it's all about, he's got to learn this offense, and his coaches got to trust him, for what he's capable of doing on Saturday. So they're only going to put him in positions that they feel he shows he can do in practice. And I don't know how in depth he's getting with pass protection, or if they're doing many RPOs. I haven't really dived into the film that much, so I don't know how much leeway they're giving him, and maybe they're not initially. So, but I'll just say, again, Ryan Day is the best at that. So it's about bringing him along accordingly, but not putting too much on his plate, because my attitude was, and I said this last week, is I'd rather be Julian Sand playing the Texas defense than Arch Manning playing the Buckeye defense, because of the weapons that Julian Sand has around him. Take nothing away from Texas. They're really good. But I think I think he had a much better matchup, and I think therefore he played better that day. But going forward is just bringing him along at a pace, where you're not asking him to do too much. And it's not saying he can't be the dude and be a playmaker down the road. I think he certainly has the capability, but right now he doesn't have to be. And I'm sure that's part of the message that they're giving him is, look, you do you. We're going to tell you what we need you to do. Take care of the football, make the throws when we need you to make the throws, make sure the handoffs are right, make sure you get the proper checks at the line of scrimmage, whatever that is, and just get better at that from week to week. And that's easier said than done. So that's probably the best take I can give on you. And it's not about, hey, we got to get down the field and get vertical and do all these things and be flashy. It's about, what do we got to do to get the W and help this team grow and get better week to week.
Now, Tim, if there's one thing you want to see next week that they improve on, what would it be?
I'd just like to see them open up the offense a little bit. I'd like to see holistically, I'd like to see them a little improvement in the punt game. I felt like a couple of the punts weren't quite where they needed to. They seemed a little short, at least, again, sitting it from the live perspective. I'd like to see that. I feel like the defense was getting good pressure, but we did only get one sack. So getting those numbers up, but I think it's taking little steps, and I think it's a little bit different now than back, obviously when Greg played or when I played. This is these are long seasons now. I mean, these guys are going to be with the playoff system the way that it is now. I mean, these guys are going to be playing. I mean, I don't know what the exact number is going to be. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 games. Where, I mean, I know we played 14 when I was there, but that was like a crazy number. Most of the time you're playing like 12 to 13, and I'm not sure from Greg's perspective. I don't even know if they played that many when he was in school. And it wasn't that much longer before me. They might have only been playing like 10 or 11 games, and then you had the bowl game. So there's a lot of season left. There's a lot of growth. So you want to see improvement, like Greg said, but it also doesn't need to be a huge monster step from week 1 to week 2. You gradually work into this week by week, just adding, a few more wrinkles, especially against some of these teams until you get to that Big Ten conference where they're going to have some tough games.
Yeah, that's actually a great set of advice, because I've always said that you just want to see improvement. I think that's all you want to see. And Shaun, I put this comment up here. Shaun, check it out.
Yeah.
Guess whose name?
Yeah.
Chris Carter.
That's not the real Chris Carter. No.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I had to laugh at that. I'm like, oh my God, who's ripping him off?
Michigan guy.
That is super funny. That is funny. And you talk about, I've been hiding, dude. I've been out in plain sight. I've been waiting for but do you have something you want to say? Because I would love for you to try me. And Greg, Chris did want to ask you this, from your personal opinion, how do you feel Julian's ended? Just from your overall perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I give him an A or maybe an A minus. Again, I always put an asterisk on my comments. I haven't watched the film, and I can tell you, being a coach, like, there's a big difference when you watch the film. Really dig into, and I'm sure Tim would know that too. But as far as no turnovers, got the W, seemed to be pretty poised out there. I didn't sense him getting rattled at all. I saw him smile and showing some emotion. I thought that was really, really good. And he did, his post-game interviews were really good, I thought. So I thought he handled it well. And again, it's not an easy deal when you're coming in there the first time. But that's where it's important to know you got teammates around you, you got great coaches around you, and that gives you confidence that, hey, I can do my part. And I give him a big thumbs up for that. I was really, really impressed.
Yeah, and our other pal Eric from our show here, he actually asked he said why this defensive line is so good at the goal line when it comes to like the stops. Is there a technique that they're using that no one else is talking about in order to be so good? Like, he's talking about like the defensive line goal stop. Like, do you think, Tim, that there's like some type of technique they're using that lets them be this good at stopping at the goal line?
It's funny you brought that up, because I saw that comment. I was like, oh, that's a good question. I'm going to answer that. No, it's a combination of things. When you get down that low, there is a little bit of technique to it. A lot of it's low man wins, basically. It's who can get lower to the ground and who can drive their feet. And that's a big thing that people don't. I don't think people know, because usually when you watch a game, you're watching guys like Greg, you're watching the quarterback, you're watching the running backs, the receiver. Where when I watch games, like, just obviously from years of playing, like, it just happens that I zone in on the offensive defensive lines. Like, I almost don't see the other stuff happening. And a lot of it's the technique. They played very low, they got low to the ground, and they kept their feet turning. And I think you also saw it, to add on to what they were doing on the goal line. I think our offensive linemen were doing the same thing. It was really impressive. And I saw a clip after the game where there was a double team on one of Texas's nose tackles where his feet weren't. He was on skates. He got driven 5-6 yards off the line of scrimmage, and his feet were literally sliding in the turf, and he wasn't turning his feet. Where it seems, and again, one game, we don't want to get crazy, but they were turning those feet. They were driving. If you can stay low, you can get that penetration, kind of essentially cut the legs out of those offensive linemen in those short yardage situations, and essentially create a pile right there at the line of scrimmage. Because that's really, like, especially as an interior lineman, for me, that was my goal. My goal was to get as low as I could and shoot as far as I could into that backfield, so that those offensive linemen couldn't get any drive whatsoever, and I would create a pile. And then hopefully, and I had a couple of pretty good linebackers behind me, those guys are coming, I'm shortening their position, so now they can come up and make that play at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. And that's kind of what you were seeing on Saturday.
To go off of what you just said, Tim, it was very impressive, because when Ohio State had the ball at the goal line, offensively, they won the battle. Then when it was turned around, they were on defense, they won the defensive battle. So in the trenches, they won. They won.
Yeah, and I know it's not fancy, and I know it's not pretty and all of that kind of stuff, but I think if you talk to anybody that really knows anything about football and what it takes to win at a high level, college, even high school, probably. I'm not real familiar with high school. I've never really coached it, but if you can win in the trenches, your offensive and defensive linemen can win, then you're probably going to win that game. And Saturday was an example of that. Our offensive line was beating up on their defensive line, and our defensive line was beating up on their offensive line. Like, we won that. The majority of that game, our linemen were winning in the trenches, and I think that's what swung the game. And I think, the same thing this week. And again, pick whatever game it is. If your lines are winning, you're probably going to win that game. In fact, rarely have I ever seen a team lose a game that didn't win in the trenches most of the game. And again, I know it's not fancy and it's not pretty and people don't notice it as much, but it's, those are the little tiny details that happen that people don't realize.
As long as you get the win, who cares, right? That's the important thing. That's the only thing that matters, is if you win the game or you lose. So, That's the important thing. Now, Greg, watching the running game, how did you feel for week one against a great defense like that? How do you think the running game looked?
I'm trying to pull up the stats here while I'm doing this. I would say I'd give him a B plus. I think it was pretty good. Again, you got to remember, you're going to get the heck of a defense right there. I was pretty impressed with C.J. Donaldson. Did I get the name right? Is that right?
C.J.
First time watching him. Did I get the right guy? Yeah. He impressed me. And again, as Tim mentioned, I want to elaborate a little bit what Tim said. I've coached high school football, and he's right. I love throwing the football, but I've learned, you got to run the football too. And in high school, if you can run the football and stop the run, which is all done up front, or mostly up front, you're going to win a lot of games. So he's dead on. I thought the offensive line did a pretty good job opening up holes. Again, our statistics weren't massive, but they were good enough. We had a rushing touchdown, obviously. So, I'd say I'll give it a BB plus again without watching the film. I'd say first time out, you got a lot of new bodies. The whole backfield new and different. With the two guys from last year playing on Sundays. So I'd say really, really good so far. Very impressed with that. And guys, I do have to hop off here, but I just want to add one more point, if I may. I want to go back because I know a couple other people had asked about, Julian's performance. And I think that the thought that just came to my mind about Julian's performance is what he did and what Arch Manning didn't do. Because if you think about what Texas fans feel like right now with all the hype surrounding Arch, and he's going to walk on water and do all this stuff, he didn't play well. And I think Arch is a great quarterback, number one. I think he's going to be great. But it's a shame with all the hype.
Mhm.
But he was rattled. He struggled. He was under pressure all day. And the opposite was what Julian Sand did. So even though Julian's effort wasn't necessarily flashy, if I was going to nitpick the touchdown he threw, he underthrew it. And receiver Tate made a heck of a play on that. But he did good enough. And I'm sure he knows he can play better. But when you look at what Arch Manning did not do and really, really struggled, that's where you see the big difference. And that's why I give the coaching staff a lot of credit for, they didn't ask him to do too much. And they put him in positions to have success. And again, coupled with the O-line playing well, and we got some pretty good production out of the run game, I think good things are coming. So, guys, I got to hop off on that. I appreciate you guys having me on.
We appreciate
Thank
you.
you for that. Tim, it's great to see you, man. Go Bucks.
You too.
Hey, Greg, maybe we can get you on another time where we got a full episode with you. We'd appreciate it.
I'd be happy to do that, guys. Absolutely. Absolutely. All
Thanks
right.
again for coming on, buddy. Thanks. Appreciate you.
You're welcome. Okay.
All right. That's great. Greg Fry. I'd like to thank him again for coming on short notice to help us out. And our buddy Tim Anderson coming on to help us out again, man. We appreciate you too.
Yeah. And Mika, we'll be getting back on the show. So save this question. So if we get him back on the show, that way you can ask him the next time.
Because we plan on having Greg on for a full episode. It's just with Matt having to reschedule, and he had to take his one child to the urgent care.
Yeah.
So he couldn't come on. So prayers to Matt's child, Matt Finkes' kid. Hope everything turned out well.
Yeah, everybody, make sure you send your prayers to his kid, and you pray that that they're okay.
So Greg and Tim were nice enough to jump on in a moment's notice and help us out on this. So we can't thank these guys enough. And Greg will be back on again, and we'll get a chance to dig into his time playing quarterback at Ohio State and kind of, his story. So just wanted to get it where he could give us his opinion on how Julian did and give us, kind of a quarterback's take on it. So speaking of takes, Mr. Defensive All-American, how did you feel our defensive line looked, Tim?
I thought they looked really, really good. I was really happy with the way they played, again, for being the first time out. I thought they did a pretty good job up front. They held up against the run for the most part. They got some decent pressure in the pass game. I definitely think there's room for improvement, and I think that'll come with reps and experience as they're doing things. Like I said, with as well as the secondary played in the game, it would have been nice to get some more of those sacks. And again, I'm not going to be overcritical because it is week one. And the fact that they played as well as they did in week one was impressive. But there's definitely room for improvement. And I think they'll get there. I mean, obviously, they got Coach Johnson as, the coach there. And he's a heck of a D-line coach, one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country. So I think they'll continue to get better. And I think maybe – like we were talking with the offense, that they were kind of keeping things maybe a little on the conservative side defensively with stuff, just letting those guys be able to play.
I mean, if you look, that's the first time, they're playing in a brand new defense, so, I mean, some of those guys, I think for a first time being in a defense and you're playing first time these guys all started as a unit together against the number one ranked team in the nation. I don't think we could ask for a better performance. Honestly.
Yeah, and part of that to me too feels like I think they didn't try to go for the sacks immediately because of Arch Manning's legs. Because the running quarterback has always been a problem for Ohio State. So I think their whole strategy was to keep him contained and in the pocket all the times. Yeah. Like they'll try to get the sacks if they can, but they were so worried about him running, didn't want to give him any lanes.
And that's actually a really good point, TG. And because I remember when we played, I don't remember the quarterback's name, but my senior year, we played Kansas State in the Fiesta Bowl.
Bishop.
And they, what's that?
Michael Bishop.
Was that his name? He was a running quarterback, but I remember we kind of had that strategy going into that game because they had played Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game that year and just absolutely destroyed and Oklahoma was like the number one team in the country, I think, at the time. And just absolutely destroyed them. And part of Oklahoma's problem was when they were firing off the ball defensively, they were getting so far up the field, they created these huge lanes. Mm-hmm. And if it was Bishop, and again, I'm not 100%, but whoever it was, like just picked and he just got back and then just took off and ran. And they just completely ran right through him. And I remember when we were preparing for that game, kind of the task was, because we had obviously Will Smith, who was a great pass rusher, and it was like, hey, okay, you can pass rush, kind of stick to the outside though, make sure you hold that edge. And they kind of told us up in the middle, me, Darian Scott, Kenny Peterson and stuff, like, hey, you're going to come off the ball. We want you to get a little bit of push, get a separation off the offensive lineman so you can see, but that's it. Let's maintain our lane. We call them pass rush lanes in the game, and maintain your lane so he doesn't have that ability to run. We're going to force him. If they're going to beat us, he's going to have to do it with his arm by throwing the ball. And that was really our game plan going in. And there are times in that game, I remember like sitting there like Preston, he was like waiting for that lane to open up so he could run. And it was like he couldn't do it because it wasn't there. We were kind of maintaining those spots. And when you do play a running quarterback like that, I think sometimes that's a super effective strategy to force them into the pocket and force them to hit you. If you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us with your arm. And if you do, good for you. Good for you. But we don't think you can. That's why we're going to do it this way. So that could have been part of the strategy, certainly. But understand, even with that, like he still looked rattled. I mean, there are things, obviously Greg could probably comment on this more than I can, but I mean, there were times, you could see some of the highlights from the game when, he's like side arming the throw. There were some throws where like his feet weren't set. He was throwing off his back foot instead of stepping into the throw. Those are things that I was noticing live at the game, from however many, yards away sitting in the stands. So seeing it up close on film. So, he was, I think he was getting panicked in there. And I agree with Greg. I think Arch Manning's going to be perfectly fine. He's going to end up being a great quarterback. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But I think the strategy that they went in with was good. I think it'll continue to get better. Those guys up front will continue to work together, learn each other, their games, what they're good at. And they'll continue to progress and be able to start getting more and more pressure and more sacks as the year goes.
Our friend and producer of the show, Mr. Buck Vader, he had a question for you. He goes, how do you think the defensive line used their hands? Did they use them well?
Yeah, I was pretty happy with it. I would have liked to have seen a little better with the rush game, to be quite honest with you, because I think I don't remember the exact stats, but I want to say they did rush for roughly 160 yards or something. I had looked at them earlier today, something like that. So I would like, as a defensive lineman, a defensive player, you always want to try to hold them to less than 100 yards. Right. Hand-wise, I thought it was pretty good. I thought they were getting off blocks. I think the only real criticism I had hands-wise was on the pass rush. It seemed like a lot of the guys were kind of running down the middle versus like fighting half a man, which is kind of what you're taught. But again, that could also go to TG's point where, hey, let's not create these huge lanes for him to be able to run through and step up and make these throws. Let's make him do it from the pocket. Because again, for as much hype as he had, it was all of it. Like he's the Heisman front runner, potential number one pick in the NFL draft, all this stuff. And this is a guy that's had like 2 starts under his belt. And they weren't even against like really good teams. And again, I'm not knocking Arch Manning. I think he's going to be a great player, but you're talking about a guy that really hasn't thrown the ball a whole lot or seen a whole lot of college action. And to be putting all that hype on him before because I even talked to Texas fan on the way. We were walking to the stadium, and I happened to be walking with some Texas fans, and we were just chit chatting, nice conversation. And I made the comment to him, I'm like, "Does that make you nervous that he's got all this hype and he hasn't really done anything yet? Like he hasn't shown any of his abilities?" And they kind of laughed. "Oh, he's a great player. He was a 5-star." And I agree with Greg. Like that 4 and 5-star crap doesn't matter in the college level. Those could just stay in high school with those guys. But so those will improve. Their hands will get better. They'll get more experience. They'll learn a little bit better. But I was happy with the way they were playing. They were gap sound. They were doing good things. They didn't give up any big play other than obviously the one pass touchdown. Run game wise, they weren't giving up a whole lot. It wasn't like we were giving up 15-yard rushes or anything like that.
I mean, on that pass, you kind of just got to tip your cap because that was one heck of a throw.
It was a good throw.
It was just a great play, and them kids are great too.
Yeah,
just made a heck of a play and a heck of a throw on.
They're scholarship players also.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Trump pretty much said that he kind of threw off the foot all day. But do you want to know like an interesting little concept as to Ryan Day has like 10 losses in his career. Do you know how many losses have been off a quarterback throwing the ball? 2. 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
2 out of 10. Every time he's lost the game, there's only 2 times that a quarterback was able to beat him throwing, which was the Alabama team back in 2020 and the Georgia team in 2022. Those are the only 2 teams that ever, and those were national title teams. 2 of the best teams of all time. 2 of the best. So these were like powerhouse teams that beat him doing this. And you could say with 22, it was mainly because they were blowing coverage. And with 2020, again, you had Devontae Smith. That was Mac Jones having one of the best years of a quarterback we've seen. So it's like you can't really like those are the only 2 times. So like, and when Ohio State seen Arch Manning, because even though he only had like 2 starts, he did play enough games where Ohio State was able to see that he's a good deep ball thrower, but his intermediate and his short passes were not good. So Ohio State was okay with giving him the medium, and the short passes. The deep balls they were not going for, but the medium passes they were going to let him do it all day because they could tell he wasn't as accurate with those as he is with the deep ball, and they knew with his legs he could cause a lot of problems. So they made it a point, I think, defensively that. Look, we're just going to cover up the run lanes. Like, we're not going to give this guy any chances to run because that's where he's most going to hurt us. And we're going to cover the deep ball because from what we've seen in the small that he's played, his intermediate and short passes are not very good. When he gets better at that, then we can start taking it a little more seriously. But until then, we're just going to have this game plan where we're going to let him throw within those boundaries. And you can tell because all game, this guy was missing these players, like he was throwing over their head, he was throwing in the dirt. It was not good, but I think that was Ohio's game plan because they just knew.
Yeah,
just off the little film.
I mean, he skipped a couple of those passes. I mean, they were showing it on ESPN. And they were breaking the coverages down, just the stuff that Matt Patricia did, and they had him they had Arch Manning so confused because they disguised the coverages. I mean, he didn't know where to go with the ball, and everybody was covered. I mean, you could see him fidgeting back there, like you said, Tim. He didn't look comfortable at all. He looked lost.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean,
yeah, your boy asked a good question on that. Your boy
he's talking about Buck Vader.
Oh,
he says, Tim, people keep saying we used an NFL secondary. How is that different from a normal college secondary? Well, these guys are NFL caliber.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's a lot of knowledge and understanding. That's really what it's the mental side of the game.
Mm-hmm.
What you're doing is if you go back and watch the game, I was actually talking to somebody at work today about this. They're showing, when you come to the line, there's all this stuff that's going on. And it's all designed for the quarterback to kind of try to figure out what you're doing defensively. What is your coverage? Are you cover 1? Are you cover 2? Are you man? Whatever. You'll motion a guy across the formation to see if somebody runs with him, you're probably in man. If not, then you're probably in some type of zone. So, okay, now where are the linebackers lined up at? Where are the DBs at? Okay, that'll kind of tell me, okay, you look like you're in cover 2 versus cover 4, whatever. But if you are a defense who can line up and make it look like you're in cover 1, And that's what the quarterback is thinking. Then all of a sudden the ball is snapped, and within, a few tenths of a second, all of a sudden he looks up and now you're not in cover one. Now you're in cover 4 or you're in cover 2. Now all of a sudden that changes a lot of things, because a lot of people also don't know either. A lot of times receivers have multiple routes that they're expected to run on a play. So when they're running their initial route, based on what they're seeing from the defensive perspective, like what the guys are doing, I might run an out route, or I might run a curl, or I might run just run down the field for a streak or whatever. Like, it's determined that way. Well, if all of that is changing in a matter of a tenth of a second or 2/10 of a second, the receiver's got to make adjustments. And if they don't make the proper adjustments, that throws the quarterback, because now as a quarterback, I'm expecting you to run it out because of this, but you run the curl. Well, that, okay, now all of a sudden, now you're not where you're supposed to be. So there's a lot of factors like that. And the more, if they can continue to do that, especially to inexperienced quarterbacks, you will have a lot of success. Now, you start playing successful quarterbacks, you start playing guys that have experience, that have been playing for 2-3 years, things like that. It's going to be more difficult because they'll be able to adjust a little bit quicker, especially if they've got receivers that have experience and things of that nature. But first year guys, relatively young starters, things of that nature, you can catch them, and all of a sudden now things aren't the way they expected because the coverages have changed. And things like that. If you go back and watch the game, you'll probably see a lot of DBs at the moment the ball is snapped will literally turn and run to a different part of the field. They don't even look back what's going on. They just turn and run because it's, hey, we're in this coverage. When that ball snaps, I got to get here because we're actually running this coverage. Well, that throws the offensive scheme completely off. And being that it's Arch Manning and, a Texas offense, it surprises me they weren't kind of prepared for that type of stuff, because they are an offensive team and they're really good offensively. I mean, their coach is known for being an offensive genius. So the fact that they didn't really have an answer and weren't prepared for it does kind of surprise me a little bit, to be honest with you.
I would say it's because they didn't know what to expect from Matt Patricia, because last year we had Knowles, and I think they know his defense. They go back and watch his tape and what he did. It'd be easy for them to actually understand what Jim Knowles was doing. But because Matt Patricia is this new defensive coordinator, has some different ways of how he wants to do things, you're not as prepared for it, because it's you got to think about, okay, what is he going to do now?
Yeah, that is a possibility, but don't think for 1 second that offensive coaching staff down in Texas didn't go back and start pulling, New England Patriots film and, when he was a coordinator at the NFL level to see, okay, what is he calling? What's he doing? Now, granted, it's obviously different because he's calling it against an NFL caliber offense. I understand there are some differences, but it'll at least give you ideas or tendencies. Oh, this is what he likes to call. This is what he likes to run. These are the coverages he likes. These are the blitzes he likes, etc. So I'm sure they went back and did that. But honestly, I mean, Texas looked really unprepared. That was my takeaway from the game. They just looked unprepared. It was almost like the spotlight was too big for them, and they just were not prepared for going into that stadium and playing.
I tell you what, they showed it on the TV where the linebacker turned his head and looked like he was going to run into coverage, and the quarterback looked and thought he was, the lineman thought he was dropping back into coverage, and he ended up blitzing, and nobody picked him up. I mean, they're showing them kind of delayed blitzes. I mean,
that's a great point I'm glad you brought that up, because that is, to me, that's phenomenal coaching. Because if you know your blitz, I know that play, I know exactly what play you're talking about. I don't remember which linebacker it was.
I think it was
Reese.
Was it Reese? Okay. So credit to Reese, because if you know you're the one blitzing, it's very, very easy to kind of, I know I'm blitzing, I know I'm going. So yeah, I'm going to do this little fake, but I'm going to essentially half-ass that fake. I'm going to turn my head quick and go. And just do it. If you watch that play, I mean, not only does he turn his head, he turns his entire body. I mean, his shoulders turn. It looks like he's going to turn out of there and run. And that's a huge credit to him. That's a huge credit to the coaching, that he was patient, that he did the technique right, and then he blitzed, and it worked out. Because I know defensively, we would run games with the D line, like we'd run tackle games or end games and things. And there were games where, okay, I'm going to set the guard up so that Will Smith could run up and then do an under move on the tackle. But it was important for me. I had to keep that guard occupied. I couldn't, all of a sudden just come up and then kind of turn and go. Like, I mean, I had to engage him. I had to get my hands on him. I had to make him think that I was coming at him to create that space for Will to be able to work. And vice versa. And if you don't, and when you're doing those fakes, again, those are one of those little tiny, minute details. But if you're not doing those little tiny things, then that quarterback knows that you're coming. And I'll kind of counter it. Like, and a lot of people probably saw this clip from Aaron Rodgers when he was at the Jets camp and he was doing some stuff and he pointed to the linebacker. He's like, "Oh, you're not coming." But that stuff, when you kind of give stuff away, it's hard. And that was a perfect example. And that's great coaching. It's great discipline on Reese's part to, really sell that fake before you go.
No.
I would say I do think I part of like the defense as to why Texas, because one of the things you learn about Matt Patricia is his defense is completely based on his personnel. He's always said this. I do not have a specific defense. It all depends on the players I have. And when you go back and you look at his players in New England, and even he said this himself, that the talent he has at Ohio State is different from what he had with the Patriots, because at the Patriots, he did not have that level of talent. He had to make a defense work based on what he had. And he did exactly that. All his defensive game planning, all his scheming was completely based on his personnel. Like, he turned a guy like Patrick Flung into like this elite safety, and this guy was not special when he came out of college. He was a good player, but he wasn't this great elite player. And Matt Patricia's defense made him look like one, especially when he made that game sealing interception. I think it was against the Seattle Seahawks, right, Shaun?
That was Malcolm Butler that did that one, but he
yeah, well, like it's like he made like a play somewhere in the new Patriots Seahawks game. It was big, and it's like it like really ended up helping seal the game as well. So it's like when I look at Matt Patricia, it was pretty similar to what people were saying about Chip Kelly when he came here, because people were like, "Well, what is this offense going to look like with Chip and Ryan Day?" I figured it was going to be a combination of both their playbooks, because for Chip, he's a great run game type of schemer, but he can dial up pass plays. It's just that he's never had the receivers to do it. And for him coming to Ohio State was, I have the receivers, I have the running backs, I have the offensive line, and I got some tight end play. I could actually make this offense work with a bunch of things and do all these different things as well. And when you talk to like Ryan Day, him and Chip Kelly combined in their playbook really created like the ultimate offensive format. So I think when you talk about Matt Patricia, I think because Ohio State still does have Jim Knowles' defense. Yeah. So he learned that defense, made some adjustments, made a whole bunch of wrinkles to it, and turned it into something more versatile, while also implementing some new things in it that helps defense like play faster without thinking too much. Which is another reason as to why I think Texas might not have been prepared, because it's like, well, what Matt Patricia is able to do is all completely dependent on who his players are, the personnel he has, the talent he has, and how he can use those guys. And he was super excited about the talent across this entire defense. He's like, "Oh, I got Caleb Downs. Let me see what I can do with Caleb Downs." You talk about playing him at nickel. I got Arvin Reese. I got Sonny Style. I got CJ Hicks. I got all these dudes. Oh, I got some plans for these guys. Let me try to work this around. So I think for a lot of teams, it's going to be hard to see what Matt Patricia does, because it's like there's so many different things you could do with all this talent on this defense. It's multiple things you can do.
Yeah, and I think that's a mark of a great coach. Like, it's as a great coach, you got to be willing to say, yes, I have things I like to do. I have a system I'd like to run, but I got to have the players to make that work. And if I don't, if something else suits my players, then I have to be willing to adjust. And I'll give you an Ohio State perfect example, and I go back to this on a regular basis. If you go back to the year we won the championship in 2002, Trestle ball, our offense, we had a good offense, but they weren't great. We had the best punter in the country. We had the best field goal kicker in the country. And I don't know if our defense was number one in the country, but we were certainly probably top 2 or 3 if I had to guess. So you know what? We're not going to do anything stupid with the ball. Okay, we're going to be careful with that ball. We're going to play field position, and we had low-scoring games because that's just the personnel that we had, that of the systems that we had. Then you flash forward a few years to when you have Troy Smith and Ted Ginn Jr. and those guys. All of a sudden, Now Jim Tressel's offense is scoring like 40, 50 points a game. And I'm sitting there like, whoa, Tress, who the hell was that at 4 years ago? That would have been nice. But they looked at their team, they looked at their players, they looked at their units and said, okay, we have the offense. We can open this up. We can do this. We can score the points. Our defense is good. They're not number one in the country good. They're not number two in the country good. They're going to stop teams from time to time, but we need to score points. So let's adjust. And I think as a great coaches have the ability to do that. These are the players I have. This is what fits them the best. So I'm going to make the adjustment as the coach, as the coordinator, whatever, because I got to have these guys play at their best. So trying to mold them. And I think you see coaches, and I can't think of a good example right off the top of my head, but I know that you've seen coaches that try to mold players to fit their system.
Yep.
And sometimes it doesn't work. You brought up a great point with New England. If you really, no disrespect to anybody that ever played there, but if you really break down New England's roster, how many of those guys did you ever hear of before they got to New England?
Yeah.
Not that many. I mean, a lot of those guys, I mean, obviously they had some superstars, don't get me wrong, but a lot of those dudes were, I mean, they played lights out and great because they were in a great system with great coaches that put them where they needed to be. And that's why sometimes you see where you have a great player for a team, whether it's in college or the NFL, that does phenomenal and is a great player and, Pro Bowl caliber, all this, all of a sudden they go to a different team with different coaches and a different system. And all of a sudden you never hear from them again.
Yeah.
They become a very mediocre player in the league. And I think that that's part of that happening, unfortunately. So it's a credit to Matt Patricia that he said, hey, these are the guys I have. This is what's going to fit this squad the best based on their abilities. So this is the type of defense I'm going to put in.
It's super credit to him. And Andre actually figured it out because it was the goal line because of how Patrick Klung lined up that made Russell Wilson change at the line of scrimmage. Instead of handing the ball to Marshawn Lynch, he thought he could just throw it. That's because of that little, like how they hide their defense, like we just talked about with Ohio State. That's how they were able to do that because it's that one little move he made.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, they practiced against that one formation. They knew because they put Malcolm Butler in there, and Malcolm said they practiced that play. If they ran that formation, 99% of the chance it was going to be a slant right there, and he was taught to just jump the slant. That's what he did instead of handing the ball to Marshawn. They tried to throw that slant in there, and he took it.
Yeah, that's just because of how the defense was lined up.
Yep.
Again, Patrick made that one little move where he made it look like, and then to force them to have to throw that slant, which I thought that was the smartest move they made. That was a super smart move to trick them.
I tell you what, Tim, you bring up a good point, though. Matt Patricia puts his players in position to be successful. Seems like last year Jim Knowles was trying to, hammer a round peg into a square hole with some of the guys that they had. I mean, if you look this year, C.J. Hicks playing the defensive end and pass rushing, that's where he's good at. Last year he had trouble reading his keys, and I know he's a real good athlete, but I mean, playing linebacker, he just was lost out there. Now you put him at defensive end, you let him just blitz. He doesn't have to think much. He can play fast. He does, fast and free. You're not trying to think too much.
Yeah. As a player, from a player's perspective, I don't want to think.
Exactly.
I just want to go. I want to let you recruit these guys because they are athletes, because they're great players. Let them go be great players. Don't make them think too much, because if it's like anything, even at home, anything you do, if you have to sit there and think about it, it's going to slow you down. Now imagine trying to play a football game where you got to start thinking. Just go. Let the players go. And I agree with you. I think Knowles was a great coordinator, don't get me wrong, but I think especially when he first came in, I think there were some rough growing pains when he first came in. I don't think he had the personnel that he had at Oklahoma State. Iowa State, but yeah, Oklahoma State. Like, he didn't have the same personnel at Ohio State that he had there, and it was like, and I agree now that you kind of say that and thinking back, like, it did seem like he was trying to force these guys into a system that, I mean, they got the job done, don't get me wrong, because they're great athletes, and they won some games, but it also came back and hurt them at times too.
Now, one question I want to ask you, Tim, you had to go through a system change. How difficult was it? I mean, after Cooper left, Trussell comes in with D'Antonio. how different was his defense compared to the defense you played the year before under Cooper? Was there a lot of growing pains for you guys, or was it pretty similar?
I would say there was a small amount of growing pains, but I remember when D'Antonio came in, and early on, one of the first meetings we had, because honestly, that was a concern because a lot of fans don't realize when we're talking about college level playbooks or NFL level playbooks, you're talking about a 3-ring binder that's probably 3 to 4 inches thick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're talking hundreds of pages in these things,
like the yellow pages.
Yeah, I mean, so when you do go through that coaching change, like that was a concern of mine. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna have to relearn a whole new defense. And to D'Antonio's credit, when he came in, a lot of the stuff that he wanted to do, he adjusted to fit our old scheme.
Okay.
Vocabulary, the terminologies we were using and stuff, he adjusted what he was doing and what he had to kind of fit. So that the terms meant the same thing with him that they met with the previous staff. So that helped us in that transition and learning the new system and all of that. But there's definitely a learning curve there. And it's important to that as you do that, I think as a coach, and again, I've never obviously coached at a high level, but to ease them in. And I think that was kind of on display Saturday where you're not pushing the envelope. You're not pushing too much. Let's just keep it simple. Let's work it. You can always build. Again, like I said, this is going to be a 15 game season or whatever it's going to be. We can add each week. And you're getting ready to run up on, Grambling State. You got Ohio U coming in after that. So you've got a couple of 2-3 weeks here where you can start now adding that stuff in with less risk because you're not playing the number 1 team in the country, or even if you don't think they were number 1, top 5 team in the country, or call it a top 10 team in the country. Which on a side note, I do want to throw out a huge shout out to college football for having these games. It was awesome. We had 3 top 10 games this weekend. You never have that in week 1, ever. I don't remember a time ever having that happen. And I thought that was awesome.
Was there any teams that you saw this week that shocked you? That you were surprised by the outcome?
Well, the North Carolina game, if anybody watched that first drive that North Carolina had, I said, "Oh, damn."
Oh, I figured you was gonna say. I figured you were just gonna say Florida State, Alabama.
Well, I thought that was a great game too. I think Florida State, they hit some major rough spots last year, and I think they had a tough transition. So I think they're a good team. And to be honest with you, and again, just being honest, I think Oklahoma's a team that tends to get overrated.
Mm-hmm.
And I think ever since Nick Saban left, I think it's like, oh, it's Alabama, so they're going to be a really good team. And they are a good team. Like, don't get me wrong. But I think sometimes teams get high praise based on the fact that they've had a history of being good. And that's not necessarily a good correlation. You shouldn't really do that. So I kind of, to be honest with you, I kind of question, because I think if I remember right, I think Alabama was number 9, number 8, something in there towards the bottom of the top 10, if I remember right. And I kind of remember thinking like, man, that kind of seems a little bit high. I don't know if I would have them in my top 10. And, Miami obviously, or maybe Miami was number 9. And Alabama was 6 or whatever it was. But I remember thinking Alabama was a little bit overrated. I thought they were a little bit ranked a little higher than I feel like they should have, especially given their struggles last year. They've got some new pieces coming in and things of that nature. But I thought that was great. The Clemson LSU game I thought was phenomenal. Crazy kind of how low scoring some of these games were too, with some of the high-powered offenses, traditionally high-powered offenses that all of a sudden are only scoring, 14 points, 20 points a game. It was kind of crazy. But no, I don't think there was anything that was like super shocking. I think Florida State's going to be a good team. I thought they were going to be a contender in that conference anyway. I just think there was an opportunity for them to show it. I think they've brought in some good pieces to kind of fix where they had some laxes in the past, or at least last year. And I think they have a hell of a good coach too, which obviously helps. So I think it's going to be a fun season, especially, rolling with these conferences the way they are. I mean, we're going to be playing again. I'm not trying to get ahead of ourselves, but we just played Texas. That's a top 5 matchup. We're going to play Penn State. That's most likely going to be a top 5 matchup or pretty close to it. You got Oregon who's in there as well. And I think you're having the same thing in the other conferences too, where it's exciting as a fan. Like you're starting to see these top 10 programs having to play each other during the regular season, and they're playing multiple games. And I think that ultimately that gives us a better product than when we hit the end of the season and we go into those playoffs, because now it's, hey, some of these teams have already played each other. They've already played top 10 teams and things of that nature.
I mean, one thing though is I think now the way the playoffs are set, I think a lot of these schools aren't gonna schedule the tougher games at the beginning, because a lot of these coaches are gonna want to get 10 wins. And if you're in a tough conference, I mean, I even heard Urban Meyer said, he goes, my job is to win 10 games to get into playoffs. He's like, I'm not going to schedule any of these tough non-conference games anymore.
Well, it's also tough too, because again, I don't know exactly how it's done now. I know a few years ago it was like this. You're scheduling. You're sitting down. Ohio State's sitting down right now in 2025, scheduling teams out for the 2030 season.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, they might be a good team right now, but who knows what they're going to be in. I mean, if you would have scheduled Florida State a few years ago for last year, you would have thought you were going to get a really good team.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up with a team that went, 2-9 or whatever their record ended up being. So like you never end up knowing, like, or you got a team that's like, oh, they're okay, they're decent, be a good team. And then all of a sudden, in that 4 to 5 years, now all of a sudden they're a top 10, top 15 team. So it's so hard to kind of predict that when you're scheduling games. And again, I'm not sure if they still schedule the games out that far. I know at one point I feel like they were.
Used to, yeah.
Yeah, they were like scheduling games out like 5-6 years in advance. It's like, man, you have no idea how good that team's going to be in 5 or 6 years. So but I think it's good. I think, because even though Texas lost to Ohio State, like that's still going to be a quality loss. It was still 14-7. So if we get to the end of the season and we're starting to have these debates about who should be in the playoffs or not, and all of a sudden you have a team, and I'm trying to remember who it was last year. I feel there was somebody last year that got in because they had a loss, but it was a quality loss. It was against maybe a top 5, top 6 team or something like that. I feel like I'm remembering that. Maybe I'm wrong, but so I think even if you play those games and you do have like one loss. Now, if you play 2 or 3 top 10 teams and you lose all 2 or 3 games, well, then yeah, you probably should be in the playoffs anyway, because you couldn't beat any of them. But if you play, 2 or 3 of them and you only lose to one and it's a close game, there's
almost as good as a win.
Yeah, I don't want to say there's a quality loss, but it's kind of a quality loss. Like, hey, man, we went toe to toe with them, and that was a really close game. And Texas can have that argument at the end of the year. Like, listen, it was week 1. We had a brand new quarterback, and we only lost 14-7 in Columbus.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, we lost, but that's a hell of a loss to have on your record compared to someone that maybe loses to, the number 15 team in the country, or something like that, or even an unranked team, something like that.
As a matter of fact, I think that's because there is a rule out there where they're going to start grading you based on, like, they're going to start putting teams in the playoffs based on their like strength of schedule, because of the whole thing with Indiana last year after they went 11-1 with a terrible schedule, with one good team to face was Ohio State and got your butt kicked. Even though it wasn't like a blowout, you still got your butt kicked. Like the game wasn't as close. If you go back and watch, it wasn't as close as the score looks. And you had like Bama and Ole Miss and South Carolina who missed the playoffs, and these teams have like tougher, better schedules.
Yeah.
And it's like that's why they're gonna start grading you based on like your strength of schedule. And it's like for teams in the SEC, you're clearly going to get the benefit of the doubt, because obviously we all know what happens there. We all know what happens. And for a team like Ohio State, it really benefits them because they always schedule these tough games. As Aaron said, strength of schedule matters, and as well as your strength of record because of that. But can also change as the season goes on, because they're not going to do it just based on the preseason. They're going to watch these teams as the season goes on and determine who had the better schedule, which of these teams were good, which of these, like, they're going to really, like, I think, do that towards the end of the season, regular season, and sort out which of these teams, like, had a tough schedule and just rank them based on that, and also decide whichever of these teams they're going to leave which ones they're going to leave in and which ones they're going to leave out. It's going to depend on your schedule at that point, I believe.
Yeah.
So
I also think it's going to be a little bit interesting too this year with the change in the seeding.
Yeah.
Because I didn't like how they did. I didn't like it before that even happened last year. That wait, just because you win your conference, you're automatically a first round bye in the top 4 seed. Like, what if your conference sucks? Like, what if like I didn't agree with that. So I like so I'm curious if that's going to kind of change things now too. Where okay, so if you're in Indiana, okay, yeah, you're the 11th or 12th seed, but you're playing the number 1 team. So I wonder if that's going to kind of change a little bit of that landscape as well, because now you're going to reseed. Your conference doesn't matter, any of that stuff. Hey, we think you're the number 1 team in the country. You're going in the number 1 slot. Because last year,
Boise State got a bye. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like, they got the teams who should be in it, right? Just not the rankings. And even though I will say, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't mad at it, because it's like, if you're telling me Ohio State got the toughest road and had the greatest run, I'm gonna be too mad at it, just because it's a great bragging right.
Yeah. Well, and it benefited Ohio State, because I don't think that you can then, because of that road that they had that was insanely difficult, I don't think then you could come back and say, well, yeah, they won, but their first couple of games were jokes.
Yeah.
They didn't really play anybody. Well, you play the toughest schedule, whereas I feel like, and I'm trying to remember the exact number of which teams it was, but I think it was that, like, maybe Penn State had to play.
They had to play both Boise and SMU.
Yeah,
and then
so they got into the semis. So it's like, come on, like, really, like, those were the 2 teams you had to play. Like, seriously?
Yeah.
And so like, if they, hypothetically would have gone through and won it, it's like, well, wait, you had to play 2 real games out of the 4 to win a championship, whereas in Ohio State or any of these other teams, they were going to have to play 4, or 3. And so, like, I think that's going to kind of go away. And I'm excited to see how this whole seeding process kind of works. And there's still somebody that's going to be upset that they didn't, feel like they should be in.
Of course.
But at that point, I feel like you're so far down at that point. Yeah, you can be upset, but let's be honest. If you're ranked that low, do you really have a realistic shot at winning the national championship? Just being honest.
Tim, I personally feel if you win your conference, you should automatically get in, but you shouldn't get a bye. Like, you should automatically get put into the playoffs because you won your conference. I get that, but shouldn't be a bye. And I tell you what, for some of these teams, I think like the higher teams, I think it should be kind of like the NFL. Like, there should be home games. I like to see more home games for teams until you get to like the final end, then have the Rose Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, and that maybe the final, final 4 teams playing the bowl.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think if you did that, I think you would help incentivize those bowl or those championship games and things of that nature, because now it's, oh, well, if I'm top 2 in the country, I'm going to have home field advantage for the first 2 weeks of the playoffs.
Yep.
Now teams are going to have to, like Tennessee had to come up, but now all of a sudden, shoot, we're playing late December in Columbus, Ohio, and you've got the Miami Hurricanes, whatever, I'm just making up a team.
Yeah.
The Miami Hurricanes got to come to Columbus, Ohio at the end of December when it's going to be 10 degrees outside and play. Like, that's an advantage for Ohio State. You earn that because you put it on the line in your championship games, et cetera. Whereas, sometimes like the NFL, what I don't like with the NFL is, like, once you're kind of in, they'll sit their starters. It's like that last game doesn't really matter. I just don't want that to happen to college football, to where you're starting to do that. So if you do something where you really incentivize, hey, if you're, again, I don't know how it would look, but your top 2, top 3, top 4 teams, you're going to host your first playoff games.
Yeah.
Assuming you win your first playoff game. Let me say it that way. But putting you in that position to kind of incentivize having that home game those first couple rounds, not just the first round. Because if you win your conference and you get the bye, you don't even get the advantage of having that home game.
Yeah, I think it should be home field advantage till the Final 4. Then you could do the bowl games as the big 4 bowl games. I like to see the Rose Bowl be where the championship's played every year. I think that's the best stadium, and I think that's where a championship should be played. But I'm biased.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're like at 1 hour and 17 now. So you got any closing?
Good conversations keep rolling. That's what happens.
Hey, I can't thank you enough, Tim, for last minute you helped us out. We appreciate you.
Love coming on. Be happy to do it anytime.
We'll have you again on soon. You're always welcome on, and you always help us out, so we appreciate you. We want to say we appreciate Greg Fry, our producer, Buck Vader. Love you. Thanks for all your help, always helping us out.
Eric, Chris, thank you guys for this platform.
And everybody else for supporting us. We appreciate you. And hey, before we go, let's get a prediction for you for Grambling. What do you think the score is going to be, Tim?
Ooh, that's a good one. I wasn't expecting that one. I'm gonna say Ohio State. I'll say 56-14.
Nice.
I think Grambling. I think we'll rattle off 5 or 6 touchdowns relatively easily. I think defensively we'll hold up. I think when they start getting those backups in, the second team, third team guys, I think Grambling might be able to put one in the end zone, maybe 2, maybe catch something on the special teams, or I think Ohio State maybe potentially is going to try some stuff offensively, maybe end up throwing an accidental pick 6 or something goofy like that. But I'm gonna say that Ohio State's probably going to win by 40 points.
Nice. I had 42-10. TG, you got one?
I had like 56-7.
All right.
Either that or like a straight up shutout. It's either that or a straight up shutout.
I'd love to see a shutout. Don't get me wrong.
I was really hoping for that on Saturday. I was sitting there in the fourth quarter, and I didn't want to say anything out loud. I'm thinking, damn, we might shut out the number 1 team in the country today. That'd be crazy.
Oh, we were hoping to too. It came so close. So close. So close.
Hey, guys, you get a chance, make sure that Thursday you tune in to the Buckeye Ladies with TG and Mika. Make sure you also catch Chris's call-in show Saturday pregame before the game. Again, I'm Shaun Schrock, the Shrockstar, TG, the Wolverine Slayer, and our All-American, Mr. Tim Anderson. We appreciate you guys. Till next time, OH.
Go Bucks, and scum still sucks.
Peace out.
We'll see you guys.